Hello, and welcome to another of my monologues. Thank you for joining me. Yesterday, I talked about how we should be more tolerant, didn't I? And I mentioned about people get very much isolated, and they sort of become, I suppose, in their own little spheres, and they don't talk to one another in ways of which they can be tolerant, of different ideas and different notions. Today, I wanted to talk about that isolation, because on the one hand, we shouldn't really be divided and conquered, as it were, divided and isolated from one another. But I also wanted to say that time away from others is also so incredibly beneficial. Time to think, time to cogitate, time to come to terms with who and what you are, time to be quiet, time to be silent, time to read the books that you've always wanted to read, time for yourself. Sometimes you need to escape from the hurly-burly, from the continually, I was going to say nagging, but, partners or children who demanding, who need their help. You need your help, your assistance, your love. And they can sap you, can't they? They can sap your energy as you're constantly servicing other people. But very often we forget about ourselves. And some people take themselves off onto retreats for a week, or they go away on holiday on their own, or they may go with a friend, Sometimes you can do it with a friend. Sometimes you go out and you trek and you camp, or you go in a hotel, you go see something. But it's that time, that sort of quiet, mellow time in which you have got time to reflect and rebuild your resilience, I suppose, is important. And I don't know how much time people get to do that these days. Especially if you are finding yourself isolated and on your own, but within a crowd. That can be very, when I moved up to London years ago, I was, in my teens or early 20s, I lived in London, hated it. It was the most busiest place, and you'd think that was the place that you could meet like-minded people, friends. At the time I was single, I thought, gosh, and you'd see all these beautiful young women. And as a red-blooded young man, I thought to myself, wow, this is heaven. And then you realise you couldn't meet anybody. You didn't know anybody, didn't know the area very well. I wasn't a member of any clubs, societies. I didn't like going down to the regular pubs and that sort of thing. I was very interested in my performance back then, as in theatre performance and mime. I was training to be a mime artist, of all the things. And I found myself very isolated, and isolated in a crowd is quite depressing, because people are walking past you. And I just found London particularly, I don't particularly like going to London as it is. Whereas when I lived in a small town, it was almost a village in Sussex for a while, you got to know people. You got to know, everybody knew you, and you got to know everyone else, and there was effectively the candlestick maker, the baker, the cabinet maker, the butcher, and so on. And you would meet people and they would talk and say, oh, have you met so-and-so? He's doing such and such. It was a lovely environment. And I think that's what draws me particularly to the rural communities. But the bit that I wanted to get to in this monologue was, of course, too much isolation, too much taking yourself away from people can make you start to become, well, almost too independent and intolerant, almost arrogant, you might say, to think that everything that you do is the most important thing. And of course, I dare say it is the most important thing for you. But one could come over in a way as a bit standoffish, a bit holier than thou, let's say. And that is a shame, because I think people need people. ultimately, but not all the time. And it's trying to find who is important to us, who resonates with us. We need friends. We need people that we can just regurgitate the worries and the problems, to listen to take advice from, and ultimately make our own decisions, of course. And in this turbulent world that we've been thrust into post-COVID, it's very difficult to find those friends, that small number of people who are on your wavelength. It is tricky. There is a lot of people who come and go in your life, but in the past you'd make friends perhaps at school or in the workplace. But as more and more people are now being encouraged to work from home, I've always enjoyed working from home, to be honest, myself, as a writer and as an entertainer, apart from when you turn up at the event and then, you know, you entertain and do your thing and then you go home and have a bit of solitude. But we need people. And sometimes we isolate ourselves, don't we? Or we found ourselves so isolated. And of course, we can't share our views with those who perhaps think very differently. As I was saying yesterday, with if you don't follow the mainstream argument, if you don't follow the mainstream narrative, you are effectively pushed out of society. You're ostracized, as they say. And this is where, I suppose, for some people, finding the old clubs and societies that we used to do is vital. You know, I used to go to a drama groups and do my acting and things, and you find those people that you like. And I imagine that still goes on to some degree, but for the youth, for the young people these days, I worry about them, because they have been pushed into this isolation in which the people they're talking to might or might not be on their wavelengths, but they're online, they're behind screens, they're somewhere in the other part of the world, they've never been met. They're on the end of a phone. They're not there in person. You don't get that sort of sense of who they are. You don't get that visceral feeling about them when you meet somebody. You can't very easily, I think, go from one conversation to another, perhaps more intimate, perhaps more open, perhaps more unguarded and genuine. Because when you meet somebody in the flesh and you're sitting there, perhaps in a pub chatting, you read their body language, you read what their face is doing, you read how they intonate and talk to you, and you know then how much you can trust somebody. Online, when it's just text coming out, especially now with AI, you don't know whether you're talking to a human or a robot or a bot. And I worry about the young people, because when I was a kid, there were these groups for young people to go to. You had youth centres, you could discuss things, you could be a rebel. Young people now don't want to be a rebel, they don't want to fight back in general, it seems to me. I may be wrong. If you're one of those young people who are more rebellious and saying actually the system is corrupt, the system is wrong, it's not helping us, then do let me know, because it would be encouraging for us as we get older, the old farts out here, to know that there is a rebellious and caring young audience out there who are going to fight for humanity and not just acquiesce to the AI computer model. But you know, these monologues get a little bit rambling as I try and work out what I'm trying to say in some form of coherent language. So in essence, what I'm trying to get across is the importance. And as somebody said in the comment yesterday, that, you know, nothing new here. And it's quite true. I mean, I'm not saying anything new. I'm not some great philosopher or anything like that. I'm just sharing my views. You don't have to watch. If it resonates, it resonates. If it gives you something to think about, to talk about, then that's, you know, partly why I do these daily videos. If you are on your own, you can get very lonely. you might be happy with your company. I'm very happy with my company, but sometimes you get a little bit, you know, too big for your goldfish bowl, as it were. And then you see somebody, or you, I don't know, put something online or whatever it is, and you can appear to be, you know, not, what's the word I'm looking for, measured, perhaps, balanced. You don't have a balanced view. You're not conversing with other people to get, and you may not want to. You know, you may be one of these people. I mean, and I know a few people who cannot abide the company of anybody, and that's a real shame, because we are social creatures ultimately, and we are sharing this planet, this realm, this earth, this whatever it is, this England, with one another. And it is sometimes it is nice to be able to open up and you know, not least be able to say, in my case, have you tried this tobacco? This is really nice. Have a go. Try this. Have you tried this meat? Have you tried this raw milk? Have you tried this probiotic? Have you tried these supplements? Have you, you know, sharing information on a one-to-one basis, I think, is absolutely lovely. But it is important that my final words on this then is, it's important sometimes to take time out, to be alone, to be with yourself, to be with your thoughts, to cogitate, to think, to regroup, to spend time with your God or your creator, the universe, however you deem, if you do deem, your presence on this as in relation to some form of metaphysical substance, whatever it is. It is essential, and I would say that probably you need to do a small amount of that every day, whether that be in just sitting still, or cogitation, or meditation, whatever, prayer, some people do. I think that's important because it helps round you and balance you. But just taking yourself away, walking in nature, is absolutely imperative, in my opinion, as much as you can, to reconnect, but not to completely become fearful and isolated of the rest of humanity, if you can help it. I don't know whether any of that made any sense to you, whether it made any resonated with you or whatever. And of course you can completely ignore everything I say, for it is only my thoughts on this particular sunny morning. I wish you well and enjoy your life, and I will talk to you anon in the future. Till then, I shall smoke my pipe.